Hello friends, I am Dr. Kuldeep Mohadikar. In this video, I will be presenting my fourth chapter from my series Literary Pearls. As in the previous chapter you have seen Andrew Marvell as a metaphysical poet. In this chapter also I will be dealing with metaphysical poet only, but John Donne as a metaphysical poet. Means the title of this chapter, the fourth chapter, is entitled as John Donne as a metaphysical poet. The Elizabethan tradition and its decadence, we will see. By the end of the 16th and beginning of 17th century, the great Elizabethan poetry had exhausted itself. Signs of decadence were visible everywhere. There were three traditions that generally followed: the Spenserian, the Arcadian, and the Petrarchian. Everything was conventional and artificial. There was little that was original or remarkable. Metaphysicism in poetry is the fruit of the Renaissance tree becoming overripe and approaching, you can say, putrescence, means in the process of rotting. Then we will see metaphysical school. Literary, meta means beyond, and physics means physical nature. It was Dryden who first used the word metaphysical in connection with Donne's poetry and wrote, Donne affects the metaphysical, and Dr. Johnson confirmed the judgment of Dryden's. Ever since, the word metaphysical has been used for Donne and his followers. However, the term is an unfortunate one, for it implies a process of a speculation about the nature of the universe, the problems of life and death, etc. Milton's Paradise Lost, Pope's essay on man, and even Tennyson's In Memoriam may be called metaphysical poems, for they are concerned with the nature of things. Donne's poetry is not metaphysical in the true sense of the word. A metaphysical poem is long, while Donne's poems are all short. His poetry does not expound any philosophical system of the universe. Rather, it is as much concerned with his emotions and personal experiences as any other poetry. Grierson says, I quote, Donne is metaphysical not only by virtue of his scholasticism, but by his deep reflective interest in experience of which his poetry is the expression, the new psychological curiosity with which he writes of love and religion. I unquote. Then we will see metaphysical imagery and concepts. In the other words, Donne's poetry may be called metaphysical only in as far as its technique or style is concerned. It is heavily overloaded with concepts which may be defined as the excessive use of over elaborated similes and metaphors drawn from the most far-fetched, remote, and unfamiliar scene or source, we can say. I quote, and while our souls negotiate there, we like sepulchral statues lay all day, the same our poachers wear, and we said nothing all the day. I unquote. What is the peculiarity of metaphysical lies in the fact that they use figures of speech excessively. Their similes and metaphors are far-fetched and are often drawn from unfamiliar sources. Their figures are elaborated to the farthest limit. The relationship they pursue are occult. They are not obvious on the face of nature. Their images are logical and intellectual rather than sensuous or emotional. So, how the fantastic conceits and hyperboles are used by John Donne. The fantastic nature of the metaphysical conceits and poetry would become clear even we examine a few examples. In John Donne's valediction forbidding mourning, true lovers now parted are likened to the legs of a compass. The image is elaborated at length. The lovers are still spiritually one. Just as the head of the compass is one, even the legs are apart. One leg remains fixed and the other moves it. The lover cannot forget the beloved even when separated from her. The two lovers meet together in the end, just as the two legs of the compass are together again as soon the circle had been drawn. Similarly, in the flea, Donne deduces every kind of consequence from the fact that a flea hopes from biting him to suck his miserable blood. He will not let her kill this creature in which their blood has mingled and which is therefore their bed, the temple of their wedding. In such passages, even Donne, the greatest of the metaphysicians, lapses into the ridiculous and the fantastic. At other times, he uses equally extravagant hyperboles. For example, he mistakes his beloved to be an angel. For to imagine her less than an angel would be profanity. I quote, "If they be two, they are two so, as stiff twin compasses are two. Thy soul, the fixed foot, makes no show to move, but doth if the other do." I unquote. As has already been mentioned about Donne's poetry, is a poetry of revolt against the worn out conventions of the day. He seeks for originality and newness and he achieves it in different ways. He seeks it through the use of far fetched and fantastic conceits. Legge rightly remarked, he will have nothing to do with the easy and familiar mythological imagery. He turns out the company of the gods and goddesses and rejects the spoils of Greek and Latin poetry. He used the natural language of men not when they are emotionally excited, but when they are engaged in commerce or in scientific speculations. He uses a vocabulary which no associative value. He wants to convey his meanings exactly and precisely and searches for verbal equivalents for emotional states. And this search often results in the use of archaic and the strange. His rhythms give a jar and jolt to the reader. They administer a shock to him and make him think by their very violence. It is for this very reason that he often begins his poem abruptly, as in canonization. I quote, "For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love." Elsewhere, he begins on a bitter note, "When by thy scorn, O murderess, I am dead." I unquote. So, in Donne's poetry, there is always an intellectual analysis of emotion. Every lyric arises out of some emotional situation, and the emotion concerned is analyzed threadbare. Like a clever lawyer, Donne gives arguments after arguments in support of his point of view. Thus, in Valediction forbidding mooning, he proves that true lovers need not moon at the time of parting. In the canonization, he establishes that lovers are saints of love. This imparts to his poetry a hard intellectual tone, but it also results in that unification of sensibility for which T.S. Eliot praised the metaphysical poetry so highly. So, friends, this was all about John Donne as a metaphysical poet in my fourth chapter from my series Literary Pearls. Thanks, friends.